This is the 70s era we're covering, and we firstly go to Moriset in New South Wales for the 1970 Australian Super Modified Championship, to be run over 30 laps and held in June, I think, of 1970. Drivers like Dave Lander, who are seen here building up and putting on the familiar gas goggles, were here to contest the event. But locals from South Australia, including Bill Wigsell, the current SA champ in suddenly 88, were there. That was the Fisher car out of Murray Bridge in South Australia. Also from South Australia was Doug Sundstrom in the ex-Peter Denton Corvette. So we're going to go through the grid now, and there are a great number of former winners involved in this particular race, including Bob Tunks from New South Wales. Dick Britton was a former winner. Jim Winterbottom was the winner, I think, in 1969. Typical Sunday afternoon race in Sydney, where the track is going to get a bit slippery and slick as the cars knock off the top surface. We see drivers like Jeff Pickering and Rhys Jackson from Queensland. Travelled Ron Smith, a chap that had great success in Victoria, was up there for this particular event, along with Sid Hopping in his Corvette. Graham McCubbin had also in the Victorian 13, the Slant 6 Valiant, was there for this event. So as they are forming up now behind the convertible Plymouth, which is driven by a former Speedway competitor in Donny Fortune. So the cars are forming up behind the pace car, now ready for a start. We're in the back chute. That's been brought in by John Hensby, a local driver, followed by Les Harrower, Peter Dickinson and Dennis Farr. And in amongst the dust down there, we've had a bit of a mix-up, and a number of cars involved, including Sid Hopping, who's jumped the wheel, sending him into the safety fence. And we've also had damage to Dick Britton's car with steering issues. So at the restart on lap 3, Hensby was now leading from Les Harrower, Peter Dickinson, followed by car 6 Dennis Farr. Local Pat Heaton, was in there amongst them, along with car 77 Tony Ward, and Dave Lander now just starting to make a charge from midfield. He was seen here going under one of the locals. Bill Wigsell and Graham McCubbin had made up a lot of ground, also seen there going through from the rear of the field. Car 41, Jim Winterbottom had also now started to make his presence felt, along with South Australian driver Doug Sundstrom, who had started from the middle of the field. So on lap 8 we had Hensby still leading until unfortunately his diff locked up and he spun infield, now handing the lead over to Les Harrower, followed by Peter Dickinson. Heaton then followed him with Farr, Dave Lander, Tony Ward, and Bill Wigsell have now moved up to about 8th spot. So with 10 laps completed, the track was now starting to get fairly slick and running into a bottom line area. Cars trying to manoeuvre and pass on the outside found themselves getting stuck out in the marbles. Here we see Dave Lander getting under, I think that's Ward or Pickering, Ward following. Bill Wigsell now had started to close the gap up from that rear start that he had. We also have got McCubbin, who's made a charge through. He's in now about 10th spot. So Harrower is leading the field now, followed by Peter Dickinson. Heaton still keeping in there with Farr. Now Dave Lander has just passed a car to put himself into 4th spot. As you can see, the track is starting to break up and become quite dusty. On lap 13, Dennis Farr, trying to come to terms with being passed by Bill Wigsell and co, spun his car coming out of turn 3, finishing up on the main straight, and was collected by Ron Smith and Graham McCubbin. Both cars from Victoria, and all three suffered damage that left them sidelined for the remainder of the race, watching the race from the infield. With 17 laps remaining, the starting order was Les Harrower bringing up the pole, followed by Peter Dickinson, Pat Heaton, Dave Lander, Bill Wigsell, Tony Ward in car 77, Pickering, Dick Britton, Rhys Jackson, Bob Tucks in car 54, and Alan Burkett, followed up at the last spot by Jim Winterbottom. So following this restart, we also lost Doug Sunstrom from South Australia for some reason or other. The cars now were finding it very difficult to pass, particularly on the outside. You'll see here Bill Wigsell attempting an outside pass on Dave Lander and gets caught up in the loose stuff and clouts the wall, giving away a couple of spots. He then recovers himself and jumps back into the lower line. Dave Lander is still doing a great job holding on to his position, about fourth at the time. So Les Harrower is showing the way, and with Jim Winterbottom still tailing the field. At this point in time, a couple of cars were starting to get impatient and were trying to pass. We find that Pat Heaton is holding position 4 and is being pressured by Tony Ward, who eventually hooks up to the back of his car and ends up against the safety fence. This brings the field to a slowdown lap while those cars are removed. You can see here the crash crew getting out there to get them apart. So at the restart, without Pat Heaton and Tony Ward, Bill Wigsell had now jumped into about 6th spot and was making his presence felt. Bob Tunks also now had come through from the rear and was in about 8th spot. Dave Lander was being very cautious in keeping his line, and at this stage was getting pressured by Bill Wigsell in the purple car 88. As you can see, the track has become a one-laner, which is pretty typical for a Sunday afternoon run. But with Bill's courage and ability, he shot round Dave Lander, who had sort of was holding a tight line, and set out after the person now, I think, who was Peter Dickinson, sitting in 3rd spot. Les Harrower now leads from Bill Wigsell, followed by Dave Lander. In the closing stages of the race, Bill starts to put pressure on Les Harrower, and in typical fashion is able to put the big Dodge underneath Les. Here we see Dick Britton, who had struggled for most of the day to keep his car under control, but he'd moved into 6th position. Then Bill Wigsell has made a terrific move under Harrower to take over the lead with 4 laps to go. Dave Lander is doing a mighty job to come in 3rd. He had been all day just keeping his car under control and making sure he didn't make a mistake. Here we have now Bob Tunks has moved up into 6th spot from way back on the field. So once again, Bill Wigsell showed his class in yet another race to bring home the trophy for the local businessman Kev Fisher out of Murray Bridge. With a couple laps to go, the track now had really become a one-liner. Dave Lander has now set himself to finish in, I think now in 2nd spot. He may have also got under Les Harrower in that move after Bill did. I think Les's tyres were starting to go off. So here we have the final place getters, with Bill Wigsell from SA in suddenly coming in 1st. Dave Lander, a great drive by Dave to finish 2nd. Les Harrower, Vic 21. Peter Dickinson from New South Wales, and Bob Tunks, of course, another past champion. And as the boys head back to the pits to celebrate what has been a fantastic day for these guys, and as you can see in the background, the sun's about to set on another event in the history of Australian Speedway.